On the morning of September 1, 1996, the Israeli military began a general mobilization and moved its forces toward the Golan Heights on the border with Syria in preparation for an imminent war. On the other side, Hafez al-Assad noticed that the Zionist army had begun to mass its troops along the border. In response, he ordered his forces to the border to prepare for war. Strangely, no one really knew which side actually wanted to start the conflict. Had Israel decided to attack Syria for no apparent reason, or was Syria determined to reclaim full sovereignty over the Golan Heights? Preparations continued as both sides mobilized their armies. Yet the war ultimately ended before it began. So what exactly compelled the Israeli military to prepare for war with Syria, despite its initial reluctance to fight? That is precisely what we will uncover in today's video. After Netanyahu assumed the leadership of the Zionist government in 1996, and just a few days later, they were shocked by extremely dangerous news. According to the information, Hafez al-Assad had declared a general mobilization, moving his forces, weapons, and his new Russian missile platforms toward the Golan Plateau, and Syria had decided to declare war on Israel in order to regain control of the Golan once again. This news came as a complete surprise to Netanyahu, so he asked Mordecai to verify its authenticity. Mordecai confirmed that the information came from their source inside the Syrian army, as well as from one of Hafez al-Assad's trusted officers. Netanyahu accepted the news, and the Israeli military began its mobilization and moved toward the Syrian border. Later he passed the news on to America, hoping that they would intervene and stop Syria's attack. Meanwhile, Hafez al-Assad received reports that the Israeli army was mobilizing and moving toward the Syrian border, so he too ordered a general mobilization and repositioned his forces toward the Golan. A few days later, America decided to send an envoy to Syria to determine from Hafez al-Assad whether he was indeed planning a war. The envoy's mission was clear. If Israel were to gather its soldiers and launch any attack, Syria would be prepared to respond. The situation grew increasingly suspicious for America, which began to suspect that Israel was playing a trick to provoke Syria into war. However, with Netanyahu's repeated claims that he did not wish to fight, the situation became even more dubious. Everything was eventually clarified concerning the person who had transmitted the news to Mossad, a person known as the Red Falcon, a trusted officer close to Hafez al-Assad, and a major source of information about Syria. To understand the full story, we must go back to the beginning. In June 1934, a Jewish child was born in Tripoli, Libya, named Yehuda Gal. Yehuda belonged to a mixed ethnicity family. His father was Italian and his mother Greek. His family held great importance within the Jewish community in Libya, because his grandfather was the chief rabbi of Tripoli. As a child, Yehuda learned many languages such as Spanish, Italian, French, and Arabic. During his life in Libya, he witnessed the many sectarian conflicts between Libyan Arabs and Jews. Born into a strict Jewish family, he developed a deep hatred for Arabs, a hatred that grew even stronger after enduring the insults of the Jews in Libya. His father taught him how to handle weapons and even hand grenades, instilling in him an extreme nationalism, telling him that it would be better to kill himself than to show mercy to Muslim Arabs. After some time, his father decided to take the family to the occupied Palestine in 1948, following the mass displacement of Palestinians from their homes. When Yehuda turned 18, he voluntarily joined the Zionist army. By 1964, Yehuda had risen through the ranks and became a military trainer. He even traveled with Israeli military training missions in Africa. Among the members of one such mission were individuals from Mossad who took notice of his military prowess and his fluency in several languages. They suggested that he try to join Mossad. In 1970, after returning to Tel Aviv with his mission, Yehuda submitted his application to join Mossad. Following 6 months of security tests and assessments of his physical and psychological attributes, his application was approved. Yehuda wasted little time in proving himself within Mossad, eventually becoming a member of its elite force, the group within Mossad responsible for espionage operations and managing Mossad agents. These elite agents are the only ones authorized to execute assassinations without needing to justify their actions. Later on, Yehuda joined a group within Mossad that was tasked with espionage operations and the recruitment of agents from abroad, a group known to include Mossad's top leaders and operatives. Yehuda became known for recruiting foreign agents to gather information from around the world. He emerged as one of the most important Mossad officers, largely due to the major operations he led. One of his most famous files was the assassination of the leaders of the Black September movement, a Palestinian resistance group that orchestrated several operations, the most notorious being the Munich massacre in 1972, during which 11 Israeli athletes were killed at the Munich Olympics. Yehuda managed to track down the entire organization and assassinate many of its members in various operations. He was also responsible for monitoring the Iraqi nuclear weapons file and, if it even existed, for sabotaging the project before it was completed, according to their alleged account. Another significant mission he handled was the assassination of the Palestinian writer Wael Zaider, a nearly impossible mission which Yehuda executed himself in response to the actions of Black September. Following these operations, he was honored by the head of Mossad and by Golda Meir herself. Despite all these operations, Yehuda did not become a household name worldwide. Then came the Red Falcon operation. After the October War in 1973, Israel found itself in a state of external and internal disarray following its loss to the Egyptian army in the October War. Israel discovered its catastrophic military failure, not least on the security front at the intelligence level. Despite having 3 intelligence agencies, Israel could not gather a single piece of information about Egypt's preparations for war. Consequently, after the October War, Israel decided to create a specialized intelligence unit within Mossad, whose sole mission was to search for agents. This unit was tasked with recruiting agents into the highest echelons of decision-making regarding Egypt and Syria, so that Israel could know in advance the timing of any future attack. The person chosen to head this unit was Yehuda Gal, because of his significant achievements, and because he had recruited many agents for Israel in Africa, including overseeing the relocation of 8,000 Ethiopian Jews to Palestine away from previous operations. Yehuda became known within Mossad as the spy with 1,000 faces, due to his ability to assume multiple identities simultaneously and carry out numerous operations around the world. Yehuda's attempts to infiltrate Egypt, whether from within or from the outside, were considered impossible. The Egyptian intelligence was completely on guard. Consequently, he decided to turn to Syria and exploit the weaker elements within the Syrian leadership circle. One day he managed to contact an officer in the Syrian army in Paris. This officer was part of Hafez al-Assad's inner circle. After several failed attempts to recruit this officer, Yehuda decided to intervene personally by disguising himself as an Italian businessman who hated Jews. He succeeded in making contact, but despite all his efforts, he found that this Syrian officer was impossible to recruit as a Mossad agent, given his strong personal convictions and his refusal to cooperate with any Israeli agent. In the end, Yehuda sent a Mossad report stating that he had successfully recruited a Syrian agent close to Hafez al-Assad. However, he added that the agent he had recruited was extremely difficult and refused to reveal his name or position. The agent also imposed special conditions before he would begin assisting them. First, that he would deal exclusively with Yehuda and no one else from Mossad. Second, that he demanded a large sum of money to be paid without question, and most importantly, that no meeting with Yehuda be recorded or filmed. He exploited his friendship with the genuine Syrian officer by visiting him annually in Paris, thus convincing Mossad that he was indeed in regular contact with the Red Falcon, and that he was gathering ordinary information on Syria, filling his reports with details. Yehuda managed to deceive Mossad for a full 19 years, earning approximately $1.5 million from his scheme. The matter then fell into a state of calm until 1995, the year when comprehensive peace negotiations between Israel and Syria took place, which would have resulted in Israel's complete withdrawal from the Golan Heights. Of course, that agreement did not receive support from the decision-makers in Israel, who decided to get rid of the then Prime Minister, Yitzhak Rabin, who was ultimately assassinated on November 4, 1995. Naturally, the comprehensive peace agreement was halted, and rumors began circulating that Syria was preparing to wage war on Israel, especially after the Syrian army's movements near the Golan and the commencement of military maneuvers. At that time, Mossad's objective was to gather any information regarding the expected Syrian war against Israel. Therefore, they decided to turn to Yehuda and the Red Falcon once again, asking him to quickly provide a report on the situation of the Syrian army and the impending war. Strangely, Yehuda chose to write a report stating that Syria was indeed preparing for war, mobilizing its army, amassing weapons, and moving toward the Golan Heights, and that they had even deployed their new Russian missile system for use in the conflict. After sending his report, he requested from Mossad a payment of $50,000 for the Red Falcon in exchange for the information. At that point, Mossad actually handed over the amount. Let's return once again to Netanyahu, who had just assumed leadership of the Israeli government. Upon hearing the news, he mobilized the Zionist army on the Syrian border and sought American assistance to stop the war and intervene. When American intelligence investigated the matter, they became concerned about something unexpected, asking Mossad about the source of the information and whether they were confident in it. Following discussions with American intelligence, Mossad decided to open an investigation into the Red Falcon operation and Yehuda's role. The investigation continued for an entire year, during which Mossad could not obtain a single piece of evidence linking Yehuda to the operation. Despite this, Netanyahu decided to charge him and demanded that he provide evidence verifying the operation and the existence of a secret agent known as the Red Falcon. Yehuda, however, was unable to prove the veracity of his claims, because, in fact, there was no such operation and no Red Falcon existed. Consequently, Mossad's head requested that the head of the youth division launch an internal investigation within Mossad to uncover a conspiracy aimed at misleading the agency. During a search of Yehuda's home, they found an envelope containing money that he had received in exchange for his latest report. The envelope was open and was missing a large sum of $50,000. During Yehuda's trial, Mossad was unable to prove his involvement due to insufficient evidence. Nevertheless, they decided to imprison him for 5 years, and Yehuda was released from prison in 2000 after his sentence was reduced, since he was considered one of Mossad's heroes who had rendered great services to Israel and had not fallen victim to one of their deceptions. Yehuda continued to live in Palestine, near Tel Aviv, immersing himself in everyday life. He later published all these details in a book about his life story, seeking fame and recognition, until he died in 2021, marking the end of the Red Falcon story. Yehuda continued to live in Palestine, near Tel Aviv, immersing himself in everyday life. He later published all these details in a book about his life story, seeking fame and recognition, until he died in 2021, marking the end of the Red Falcon story.